a look here. I need my glasses.
Jesus, I'm living with those
Bladworth, Saskatchewan. What is a kid doing Bladworth, Saskatchewan? Have I got that right?
Yeah, you've got it correct. Thank you for mentioning that too.
Is that right?
Yeah, ever since my first hockey card, where I said I was from Saskatoon,
Right.
I think my father has disowned me. So I'm trying to work my way back into the good books. But
so born in Saskatoon or born Bladworth or like
the hospital was in Saskatoon,
right?
But raised in Bladworth,
Right.
10 minutes north of Davidson, a little farm just outside of Bladworth, and probably about population of 100, 150.
Sure.
We had a park, played some tackle football in that park.
Yeah.
We had a rink, which was pretty cool. Everyone knew where the key to the rink was.
One of those things, yeah.
Natural ice. So,
of course,
my favorite part about that rink was, of course, it had chicken mesh at one end. It had the snow dump hatch at the other end.
Yeah.
Manual scraping, but it was the oil drum on wheels, which you filled up to flood the ice, and those size 13 golf spikes with the old feathery flaps, that cover the laces.
I feel like we're not that old, but when we talk about this stuff from when we were, maybe we are old. Because really, if kids saw that nowadays, they'd be like, what is this, ancient times?
The other integral design of the Bladworth Arena were the square nets with the welded on posts. So if you're too lazy to take the hand drill and dig a hole for those posts, then your nets, sat on a little bit of an angle, so you could always score from the side. So it was very quirky.
Yeah, that's the home ice advantage, right?
Yeah. But it's it was straight agriculture, farming around.
So were you like a legit farm kid? Were you
I was a hybrid. Yeah,
because you strike me as a guy who's from a rural area, but maybe not a guy who's in the tractor and repairing things.
Oh yeah, no, not repairing, breaking. I was very good at that. I actually lived in the town of Davidson until I was 7, and then my grandparents were on the farm. We lived in town. My dad was a mechanic by trade, so we flipped homes, and my dad took over the farm, got out of the paint booth at the mechanic shop.
Right.
And so I lived on the farm from 8 till 15 till I moved away and came back and helped a little bit for a few years, but I probably wasn't very great help. But drove tractors, grain trucks. I was never allowed to seed because I couldn't drive straight enough. That didn't cut it at the Sarich farm. So but no, I was a farmer for just under a decade.
Yeah. So because you were like the Saskatoon kid that plays for the Saskatoon Contacts, that plays for the Saskatoon. So that's maybe a little overblown because you weren't really a Saskatoon, or were you?
No, like I played hockey in rural Saskatchewan up until 14 in Davidson. A couple of years we had to join up with other teams. There wasn't a lot of 78s that played hockey in my town.
Right.
And so no, I'm not a Saskatoon boy per se.
Right.
Yeah, but very fortunate, an hour away from home. Like, I don't think I realized how fortunate I was at the time to play midget AAA, idle into town in the Ford F100 after filling up at the pumps at home, eke around all week, and
Purple gas.
We had just moved past that, and I was able to just coast home on that same tank of gas to refuel every weekend. So I was pretty spoiled.
So were you a standout at a young age? Like, were you kind of always the best kid on your team, that sort of thing? Was it pretty clear that hockey you were going to be maybe not NHL, but you're going to be playing some hockey now as a kid?
It was like, it's hard. Like, I remember Chad Allen, who went before me in Davidson, Saskatchewan, who became a Saskatoon Blade and played World Juniors. If we needed a goal, you give the puck to Chad and he'd skate through everybody and score, even though he was playing defense. Like, and I guess I had a little bit of that in me too. Take the puck, I'm seeing some video now. Wow. You guys have really done your work here. So up until age 13, and at age 13, it changed. Like, everyone gets better. And I thought I was not a bad hockey player, but age 14, I almost quit. That was the year we joined up with Lorburn, town 40 minutes away. I was used to having 3 or 4 defensemen on a team and playing every other shift.
Right.
All of a sudden we got 6 defensemen and it's like, I'm sitting.
Yeah.
I'm not playing. And I was the young kid because it was 15 and under then, right? So I was playing as a 14-year-old with 15-year-olds. And at the end of that season, I was like, I'm not very good. And honestly, it was Chad Allen's dad, I think, I still to this day, must have said something to the Saskatoon Blades. All of a sudden I got an invite to their rookie camp and somehow played my way into that last spot on their 50-man protected list. And then I specifically remember as a 15-year-old, like I just turned 15 in August, going to the Saskatoon Contacts camp that fall.
Yeah.
I wasn't very good. Like,
so you were listed by the Blades before you played AAA?
Yes. I went there as a 14-year-old, but like I was never drafted.
Right. Yeah. I didn't know that. I figured.
I remember going to school and the one other 78 that played hockey in my town, Blaine Heiser, he comes to school and he's like, Bantam draft today. I'm like, what's that? Like we had no clue.
Yeah.
It was newspapers and telephones. There was no connection. So that's
kind of crazy though, because that is, even then, rural Saskatchewan, there's hockey, people talk, and just so many players that have made the NHL have come out of little towns in Saskatchewan that you would have kind of got lost there. Is kind of amazing. That's great work by the Blades.
Yeah. And it was pretty cool too. Like my 2 older cousins that are both a year older than me, they're 77s. I had actually made the contacts because I think as a 15-year-old, because I think the Saskatoon Blades were like, let's keep this kid here and develop him.
Yeah.
I never could get to the bottom of that, but I'm assuming that's what happened. So we're missing a player still, even though like exhibitions started and they're like, do you know any good hockey players from around you? I'm like, well, my cousin Trevor's pretty good. He came, made the team. I played 2 years with him. He was a Moose Jaw Warrior then after that. And my cousin Kirk went down to Moose Jaw and he played for the AAA Warriors.
Yeah.
And so we played against each other and we actually had 2 neutral site games in Davidson. My 15-year-old year back in the barn that was built in 39.
Yeah.
And then we got a brand new rink in Davidson the next year and we played another neutral site league game.
That's hilarious.
In Davidson. So there's small town for you.
Do you know any guys that are good at hockey?
I got a couple.
Yeah. See, you could be a scout.
This might be a little off topic, but it is super interesting. And I'm sure everyone in Saskatchewan probably has similar thoughts and ideas, but the amount of players like within a 30-kilometer radius that came out of the Davidson area that played junior hockey and pro, and like you got Braden McNabb won a cup with it. It's actually quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's just a product of like, you play your high school sports against each other. You play hockey against each other, ball against each other. I truly think it's like there's kind of some love-hate there in those small towns, and you push the people around you and you're always competing against each other. And I'm sure it's, the same with associations within large cities, right?
Yeah.
You push each other to be better. And that little community's had a lot of kids. If you looked at,
I often wonder too, because now when you look at kids, you get extra ice and you're paying for this and you send them to camps. With all the hockey that's played, probably rural kids like you would still have had more hours on the ice with a puck and just playing around than kids get nowadays when they're going 12 months a year. Do you know what I mean? Every day after school, on the weekends, you'd be out. What time is it? It's 10 a.m. Or go till it's dark.
And if we weren't skating in the rink and we weren't skating on a frozen piece of ice, we were playing ball hockey, like frozen tennis balls.
Yeah.
Like that's why I was pretty useless on the farm. I was too busy like pounding pucks.
Right. Dad was okay with that. Probably.
Soon as I need a 9/16 wrench. Where'd you go?
Yeah. I said 9/16. Get the wrong one.
Yeah,
Catching hell. So you go to Saskatoon, you make the team. See, I didn't realize that. And then, so was that because Warner had just left? but you've still, those are good Blades teams then. Were you part of, did you keep up the tradition there as good Blades teams, or was there a bit of a fall off?
Nope. So as a 15-year-old, played midget AAA. As a 16-year-old playing midget AAA, I got my first taste in the WHL.
Yeah.
I got called up when Rhett and Chad went to World Juniors to fill in for them. And then I actually, at the end of that season, I got to come up for a couple of playoff series with them, which was super cool. And I think the Blades, we made it to the second round. That was awesome. I got to play with those guys, got to play with Rhett before he moved on and became a Florida Panther. It was kind of my first taste. And then next year, as a 16-year-old, that was a pretty pivotal year for me. And I've told this story before, but I came out of training camp and they're like, hey, we have a spot for you on our team, the Saskatoon Blades.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we're going to leave it up to you. You can come here, but you're going to be the 6th, 7th guy. And might not be every night, and you're going to have to prepare yourself for that. And I was like, I went back and talked with my parents, and I'm just like,
was that Mulligan at that time?
Yes.
Don Clark.
Lauren was still the coach then.
Anyway,
that 16-year-old year, because when I was called up, Lauren was my coach. Daryl Lubanicki, GM.
Sure.
Don Clark was my coach as a 17-year-old. But yeah, I sat there and wrestled with the decision because I had a couple of pals that were gonna do it. Greg Phillips was gonna play with the Blades that year.
Yeah.
And going and playing midget AAA as a 16-year-old was the best thing I ever did. That's the year I felt like, wow.
Yeah.
I got to play Canada Winter Games. I won the top defenseman in the whole league, which still kind of mind blowing. But I just remember running over kids and I felt like I was I felt like I was a hockey player that year, because 15, you're just trying to fit in and it's crazy.
Overwhelmed.
But as a 16-year-old, you gain the confidence. You're like, I felt like I fit in.
You know what? Credit to you. I don't know how many kids would do that. It's like, because if I don't go now, I might never get back there. They got a spot for me in the WHL. What if I never get back there?
Honestly knew I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Like maturity, strength, all that stuff. I knew that I was scared too. I was like, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to get beat up.
There's some 20-year-old guys in that.
Yeah.
League.
I'm like, I better stick around midget and work on my craft a little bit too. So that was a big one. But back to your original question, the Saskatoon Blades and the teams I played on.
Right.
As a 17-year-old, I played with Frank Banham, who scored, I think, 82 or 83 goals that season. And Mark DL had 100 and some points. He assisted on all of Banham's goals, but we were a very poor team. If you look, we limped into the playoffs with a under 500 record. And then Brandon just disposed of us in 4 games. The next year, we were really awful. Thought it might be the worst Blades team in history, but some other team came along and only won 7 or 11 games after us. So it was embarrassing, and it was hard to play. We had a rink that holds 14,000 people, and you're playing in front of 2,000 or 1,500. You can hear everything everyone's saying about you in the arena. But made the most of it and enjoyed my teammates, and it was still a great experience, junior hockey. But for me, I was super injured my whole junior career. So played 50 games average, 3 years in a row. So it had its ups and downs.
And your first full season is your draft year, right?
As a 17-year-old. Yeah.
So between getting your first year in the league and the team's not real good, you guys get good. It's funny you mentioned the years, because that's about when I started covering the league. I was in Brandon, so I remember that. It's they got this one line that's unbelievable, and the rest of them they're kind of horseshit, to be honest. So, and then,
thank you for putting it so politely.
Yeah, that's right. And then Greg Phillips, then he gets traded to Brandon. So I know about it. It was Philly. Philly's coming to play for the Wheat Kings. Anyway, but yeah, but there was still, the Blades were, that was one of the teams that you'd come out and see. Maybe Moose, not so much Moose Jaw or some of the other teams, but when the Blades came to town, you were in for a good one. So the first year, you're kind of getting your feel of the Western League. It's also your draft year. Does that arc of your progression, and things are starting to come together? Does that continue through that year? Because what was the feel for you as you get closer to the draft and you're hearing your name and you're getting ranked and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it was like, uh, yeah, I
It's
could
a
hear.
different time that you're not going on the internet to read clips about yourself.
No,
I get that.
and you're waiting, like everyone's waiting for the rankings to come out, the Hockey News rankings at like Christmas or whenever they would do it. And I actually wasn't sure where I stood. Like, I knew I had a great year as a 16-year-old. I knew that I was ready and deserved to be part of the Saskatoon Blades. But again, it's a feeling out process. You get into the league and you're in your first line brawl and get my nose knocked across my face. And you're like, there's another like level of adaptation. And I think like back then we weren't prepared like these kids now. Like, you didn't know what you were getting yourself into. It was just kind of like trial by fire.
Yeah.
Get out there and get after it. And I was like, that season actually went quite well for me, minus the injuries. Like, I think I pulled both groins, both hip flexors. It just took me forever to kind of get over that stuff. But I did have a good season. I played with Wade Belak was my teammate. He was drafted in the first round the year prior. There was definitely some animosity in the room because I was getting some of his minutes.
Gotcha.
And so you're dealing with stuff like that. Great teammate. But again, there's all those underlying things that are going on while you're out there.
Yeah.
So I just kind of kept my head down and went about my business. And I was actually super surprised when I was being ranked like as a second rounder, and even mentioned being like as a first. Like, I was always comparing myself to other guys around the league, like a Chris Phillips and like Wade Redden, who had gone before, and you're these top defensemen. And I knew I had kind of my own little niche. And even back then I still had some offensive ability. So I knew I could kind of compete with these guys, but I always doubted myself offensively. And that's probably why it completely sputtered.
I'm not sure if that's why,
but
yeah.
Cause like even going into my first year pro, I was still like second line power play and doing stuff like that. But again, you have to adjust as you go along. So yeah, that was a fun year because I was learning, and we did have one line that was great. We did drag ourselves into the playoffs, but it was another steep learning curve.
Yeah. So the summer comes, and the Buffalo Sabres, 27th overall. Is it one of those things? Did you feel like it was going to be Buffalo? Did you have any kind of, you've now played that 16-year-old or your 17-year-old season? It's done. Now you sit back and wait. Did you think it was going to be first round? What were your expectations? I guess
I didn't think it was going to be first round. I thought if it did, it's like just a blessing. I think I was kind of slotted in around 30th is what everyone was saying. So if you go by the rankings
today, your first rounder.
Yeah.
They just needed more teams in the NHL. That's all. You'd have been a first rounder.
It's crazy though. Like, you look back at our draft, we were not a strong draft. If you look at all the first rounders, you'll be like scratching your head to figure out who some of them were.
So you should have been drafted higher is what you're saying. If we were to do a redraft, you'd be a lot higher.
Probably. Yeah. Okay. Oh, but so going in, I'd probably spoken to over half the teams in the league. I'd done the fly arounds, like gone to Anaheim, gone to New York, gone to Washington. You're doing fitness testing. I did the old New Jersey Devils, like in St. Louis where our draft was. They're like, would you come do some fitness testing? So I'm on the treadmill, got the headgear on, doing the VO2, just running like a madman for 12 minutes. And then I get off and they hand me $100 US. And they're like, thanks for coming. I'm like, do you want me to go again?
Yeah.
Like, broke kid from Saskatchewan. I'm like, 100 US, that's like 140
that's a
Canadian.
lot of money. Yeah.
Like, I'll do it. I'll try it again.
Yeah.
So did all that stuff. Never spoke to Buffalo once. So we're at the draft. I'm sitting there with my parents. Greg Phillips is there with his crew agent. And the first round ends at 26th, and a pal of mine, Jesse Wallen, gets chosen by Detroit. Yep. And I was actually thankful. I'm like, because they were a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And you're never making that team ever, not for like 10 years. So I was like, well, if a guy's not going to get picked by someone, that's probably a good one. So it's intermission. Parents go up, get some popcorn. My little sister's there. Got to take her to the bathroom or whatever. And second round convenes. That's the year that the Buffalo Sabres changed from the traditional blue and gold to the red buffalo head with the one eye. I couldn't even tell what the sign was. I would look at it. I'm like, what is this? Is there a new team in the league?
Who's up?
I was like, what is that thing? Oh, it's a buffalo. Yeah. And then they called my name. I get up. No one's around. So I'm like, well, I'll give Greg Phillips a hug. I can't remember. I don't know who was sitting there, but
in the popcorn line.
My whole family was gone.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, after the whole day goes by and you're super excited.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm like, then I figured it out. Ross Mahoney, who is now the assistant general manager for the Washington Capitals. He was one of my 2 coaches at the Canada Winter Games for Team Saskatchewan. I didn't know that he was a scout for Buffalo at the time. So if I had to point the finger somewhere, because like, again, I never spoke one word to them, like in a year leading up to the draft. So that one came out of left field.
That happens a lot, right? That there's some scouts somewhere along the line saw you when you were young and then saw you again. And a lot of those teams there again, not that long ago, but it's a while ago. Anybody got anything? Saw this kid. He was great. All right, take him. Right. You don't have just reams of tape on every kid beyond the first round or whatever. But so was that tough for dad? Like, was dad there, or was he in the popcorn line? Now, as a father, you'd be like, I can't believe I missed that moment for my kid.
I caught him on the way back. I could see him come filtering out when I was coming back from the stage. So
Can you imagine now, though, as a dad, you come back from the John and you look, where's my kid? Oh my God, he's on the draft floor.
I think they heard my name over the intercom too. So then they all came.
You'd be just
came running.
You'd be just crushed. Your kid gets drafted, but that was pretty cool.
He's probably the guy. He's probably a 3rd rounder anyways. Before we got
right. Yeah. That's Greg Phillips, Cory Sarich, the 96 draft. And the jerseys, as you said, you were the first one to wear one.
I guess I'd be, well, Eric Rasmussen.
Maybe. Yeah, there was a first round, I guess. Yeah.
And then it was myself and Darren Van Owen, Brandon Wheat King that went in the second round. And it's funny. I remember the other guys that were drafted by the Sabres, because then we spent 2 summers together in Buffalo.
Sure.
Back when there was no real CBA.
Yeah.
We used to spend 8 weeks working out and skating.
Yeah. So the year prior, you go and play, well, I guess it'd be 2 years prior. You go and play games when Warner and Allen are gone to the World Juniors. Did you feel like could you have imagined at that point, when those guys are at the World Juniors, you're going to be at the World Juniors very soon?
No, like I didn't even have myself on the list. Right.
Yeah.
So like they were holding, at the time, they used to always hold those summer camps, which I was on no one's radar, but that first year in the league, we're leading up to Christmas, and I was actually shocked. Like, I get this letter or this call. I can't remember how they informed me, probably a phone call.
Yeah.
And like, hey, we're inviting you to winter camp. I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you're serious? And I'd had a pretty good season, but I was like, okay, this is super cool. So I'm just going to go there, and I'm going to like.
Was it in Calgary, or where was the camp?
It was Kitchener.
Kitchener, okay.
Kitchener Water, like the winter camp, 2 weeks. You play some university teams in exhibition. You try to scrap your way onto this team. And just trying to think a couple of things that happened while I was there. I back in the day when you didn't ever tell anybody about concussions, I had an issue where if I used to get my bell rung a little bit, I'd lose my peripheral vision, and it would come back in probably, like, if I sat down and didn't do anything, like 10 to 20 minutes, take some Advil, relax. I played 2 periods of that one exhibition game out there, not being able to see out of one eye
with horse blinders on,
because I was not coming off the ice, because I saw what happened to the guys that got injured at camp
every other year. Yeah.
And even during that, it was like, here's your letter. Goodbye. Thanks for coming. I know what the other one I wanted to say was. It was so embarrassing. Before even getting to camp, I'm in Saskatoon. Paper plane tickets, right? You get the thing in the mail. It's like a little booklet.
Yeah.
And I get these tickets mailed to me. Barely flown anywhere before. I think I flew to Grand Prairie from Regina for the Canada Winter Games. I go in, I pack my stuff. I go in, I say goodbye to the boys. Like, hey, I don't know, I'm going to get out there. And they're like, good luck, all this stuff. Get to the airport, hand the ticket to my lady. She's like, you don't fly till tomorrow. I'm like, oh God, what do I do now? Yeah. Do I go back and just sit in my house and wait till tomorrow? But no, I got a roommate. He's going to rat me out.
Yeah.
So tail between my legs, I better get back to practice. On the, what are you doing here? I'm like, I don't go till tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Yeah.
So it was a day early. I was so excited.
Do they have dates on those paper, those paper boarding passes or?
So that was highly embarrassing. Got through camp in Kitchener-Waterloo, and then it's the super intense process at the end. Like you have a roommate for a week or so. And I was with Daryl LaPlante, and now we're getting down to like the first round of 2 or 3 rounds of cuts, and the phone rings at 5:30 in the morning. You look and you're like, oh boy.
Is that for you or for me? Yeah.
It was for Daryl.
Yeah. Then
I room with Dan Cleary, and this is last round of cuts, and you're wake up at 5:30 that morning. You're probably not sleeping, and you're just sitting there. You're waiting. Phone rings, and it was for Dan, and I shocked the pants off me.
Yeah,
because Dan Cleary, Cory Sarich, it was like, he was an offensive stud.
Yeah,
out there in the OHL, and then it's like, then there's this grinder from the Western League, and honest, in my second year, going through the exact same process. I had Dan as a roommate again on the last day, and he's like, Sarchi, that phone rings this morning. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it rang again for Dan. That was tough.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Hey guys, Village Honda presents the Pinder Report weekdays throughout the season, but we're at your dealership for life today in the Northwest Auto Mall. Let's see what's happening at Village Honda. Mark your calendars. August 24th is the 4th annual Acura and Honda Show and Shine, 12 till 4. Everyone welcome. Prizes, all kinds of family fun. We hope to see you there, here at your dealership for life in the Northwest Auto Mall, Village Honda.
Barnburner isn't here without our friends at Betway. They've been huge for us right from the start, and with Betway right now, you'll get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Go and create a brand new account with Betway. Scan the QR code on the screen, redeem your bonus. Then when you place a bet, no minimum amount required. If that bet loses, you'll get a refund up to $200 back into your account, and then you can go back in and bet on your favorite sports. This offer is only available outside of Ontario, though. Great stuff. Thank you, Betway.
Hey guys, it's Pinder with the brand new location of Professional Skate, one of the original hockey institutions of Calgary. We're just on 42nd Avenue Southeast off Blackfoot Trail. Let's check it out. Okay guys, we're here. If you remember the old location, everything was great, but everything here is just better. Check it out. We're talking about 4 stories of pads for the goalie in your life. All colors, all makes, all models, gloves for days. I don't know that the Cincinnati Reds have this many gloves in their locker room. This is unbelievable. Beyond all the goalie gear, you see the masks, the pads. We've got our figure skating area here. In 1972, when Pro Skate originally opened, it was just that, a figure skating shop. Things changed, the Olympics came to town, and the skate sharpening service that's famous around Southern Alberta, they were the official skate sharpeners of the 1988 Olympics. I was alive then, many of you weren't. Let's go check the hockey gear. Feast your eyes on this massive skate wall here at Pro Skate. We're talking one of the largest collection of skates in the country. True, CCM, Bauer, and Bauer's Fit Lab that will literally scan your feet, 3D imaging, to find out exactly what size and skate is best for you. Saturday, August 10th, come check it out with Boomer and I. Live barn burner right here at the new Pro Skate. We'll see you there.
As always, a big shout out to one of our big sponsors, McLeod Law. Great people. We talk about it on the show. Shane King and Peter Klein and Austin and everybody there. What it is they're Calgary people taking care of Calgary people. You're not getting, when you reach out to McLeod Law, they're not sending you to Toronto or Vancouver or someplace they don't know who you are. These are Calgary folks. They're proud of those Calgary roots. They are here every single day. It's a big part of their long-standing client relationships. They get the way things work, and they want to help you. Whatever your challenge is, business or personal, they're just a click away. McLeod-law.com is the website. The very best. Good people making a difference. McLeod Law.
Let's get back to another summer edition of Barn Burner.
So the first year, Geneva, Switzerland, beat the Americans in the gold medal game. Mike Babcock's the head coach. Best ever. It's the Canadian dream.
It was super cool.
Yeah.
We were just a bunch of like blue collar hockey players, and we didn't have a lot of talent. Like if you look through the lineup, not like overwhelmingly offensive. Some of our defense, if you looked at them, like, yeah, there was Jason Doig at the time, Jeff Ware, myself, Hugh Hamilton. We had a Chris Phillips out there. But if you look at our defensive core, like these weren't perennial superstars.
No, but at the time, Doig was this big, guy, great skater, and Ware was
big,
big
personality.
Right. Yeah.
You got up front, you got guys like Dwayne Hay, Steve Bégin.
Yeah.
You've got Boyd Devereaux, Alex McCauley, and Christian Dubé.
Yeah.
All the like Joe Thornton is a pretty good name, but he was our underager that year.
Yeah.
Brad Larson was our captain, and every team event function we did, there was no one in that group that thought they were too cool. There was no one in that group that wasn't like ready to go.
Sure.
That team was like, we had some serious pressure. We got to win 5 in a row for Canada. And I almost knew it was going to happen because of our locker room. It was super cool.
Yeah.
Like guys were so together, so committed, and it just happened because we got to work.
Yeah. The next year, not as fortunate. Still the worst ever finish for Canada at a World Juniors.
Gotta be.
I think is still, again, I'll get my glasses.
8th place.
A 6-3 loss to Kazakhstan in the 7th place game. Oof. What happened, Captain?
Yeah, Captain.
You must have been thinking, I'm back. I got the C on. This is going to be great.
I wasn't supposed to have the C. So there's only 2 of us returnees, myself and Jesse Wallen. There's another guy from our D-Corps. Jesse's supposed to be our captain, but he breaks his ankle or his foot. Yeah. I can't remember if it was in exhibition or if it was at the camp in Kitchener. So, there's only one other choice, I guess, and we'll give it to the other wily veteran that's here.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of regrets from that year. I was so overwhelmed then by the talent level on our team that was there that I didn't say enough. I didn't do enough. I was too immature to like try and intervene. I don't know if I really could have had an effect on our group.
But didn't you also, because you talk about Thornton, by the next year, he's not there.
No.
And Patrick Marleau could be there, but he's not there. There was about a handful of guys that were in the NHL that should have been on that team or were eligible to be on that team.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 biggest names, but there's probably a few others that probably could have come from their clubs and helped us out. So we were we had a lot of rookies.
Yeah.
You got 18 to 20 rookies on your team, but you got Roberto Luongo in net. You got Matthew Guérin backing up basically, or both sharing time. You got the likes of Vinny Lecavalier, Alex Tanguay, Josh Holden from the Western League. You got Eric Brewer on defense.
Did Brad Stewart get cut from that team? Did I see that?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. In hindsight, maybe.
Yeah. He had he was such a, he's a quiet guy throughout his whole career.
Yeah.
But just so steady. He could have come in pretty handy, I think, during that tournament. But we had some crazy stuff happen to us there. Our trainer only brought 1 set of jerseys when we're playing the Russians. We're 2 hours down the road from our hotel. We both have reds or we both have whites, and they have both sets, but they won't change.
Sure.
So our trainer's on his way back to the hotel while we take to the ice with some Swedish rec team's jerseys on. You knew the tournament wasn't probably trending in the right direction at that point.
Because you guys were the champs, or you were hated, right? It was take down Canada, but targets was on your back.
We had guys on our team late for meetings. The year before, guys were like 15, 20 minutes early for meetings. We had guys that missed buses. Our team just lacked the discipline that you need to have. And I don't know if it was maybe some larger egos in the room that had something to do with it. And then I didn't do anything to keep those in check because I was just honestly overwhelmed.
Right.
Tried to say a few things, but I just felt like kind of insignificant.
Is that something that even down the road in your NHL career that you kind of draw back to? I didn't say things, or I didn't do things then. I'm doing it now, whether I got a letter on my jersey or not.
I still have regrets still from, I think I finally got it right in Denver my last year. Yeah. Like I just said what I was thinking. That group though, we came together and won a lot that year. So it's always easy to speak up when you're winning.
Sure.
It's not easy to say things and really put people in their place when it's tough.
Yeah.
And I should have just, I think I played the game the right way and put forth a pretty darn good effort. So I don't think I should have been as scared to say things in the locker room. Like I should have spoke my mind when guys are like not focused, but it's not easy, you know, when guys are making twice as much money as you or have twice as much talent as you. And that's why trying to put together a hockey team that can function together and with every good luck being a GM.
Yeah.
It
goes to show you though, right? You talk about chemistry and identity and that. Maybe not a better example. One year we're tight, we're not that skilled, win it all. Next year we got skill, but we got nothing going as far as chemistry, and you finish almost dead last.
And maybe people view it differently than I do. Like if you talk to someone else on that team, I really haven't talked about it because I've tried to block it from memory.
Well, sure. Wilf Paymont coached that. Never heard from him since. You know, that starts to when the summit started and how are we practicing our kids? And it was rock bottom there for a little bit. Not your doing.
I guess if we did something good for Canadian hockey,
you sure did.
We made them do a quick review.
Yeah, see? The way we practiced the game ratios, and we got our put some centers over here. What do they call them? The practice when you break up the ice and practice. Thanks for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Glad we could help out.
Yeah. So moving on. So you're done your junior career. You get dealt to Seattle, which we don't need to get too far into, but this is kind of the first time now that Saskatoon boy sort of is not living in nearby Saskatoon. What was the situation there? Because Seattle was not a good team, right?
All I did was drive around in traffic.
Yeah.
10 minutes anywhere to an hour and a half everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't believe the kids that were in school in Seattle, because at the time we did a lot of our practicing downtown, but we lived out in, can't even remember the suburbs, but like Kirkland and those areas. And all I did was drive around. And I was a 19-year-old not going to school. And it was like hard for me to get to places on time. So I can't imagine the guys that were like in high school.
And were you in the Key Arena then?
Yes, we were.
So it's kind of,
it was the old it was the basketball setup. Yeah. And, it was a fun experience. Again, I got a staph infection in my arm, which like I wasn't around for the playoffs against Portland that year. I don't know if I would have made that big of a difference, but I had been traded from a team that was like 7th, 8th place in Saskatoon. And I thought we were making progress.
Yeah.
They had got rid of Don Clark, Daryl Lubanicki. They brought in McEwen as GM and from Madison Hat. I can't remember his name right.
Ricario?
Willie Desjardins as our head coach. So I had a cup of tea with those guys for a couple of weeks, and then they traded me for a goalie, kind of a straight across 7th, 8th place team swap. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of scratching my head, right? Because like I wanted to see it through with Saskatoon. We're going to make the playoffs here. We really stunk the year before.
Yeah.
Like this is, and so I think we both got into the playoffs, but we were pretty beat up, and Portland was a really good team. So, but
was that the Marian Hossa?
Yeah.
Portland Winterhawks.
Yeah. Andrew Ferentz. Yeah. We got to, I get to Seattle. I'm hearing all these rumblings about this Mark Parrish kid, this 20-year-old that's come back from college to play or gone from college to play junior. First game I get there, road trip to Kelowna, old barn, square corners, tight, tough game. Scott Parker's running around.
Yeah.
And I have a goal and an assist and a fight. And I'm like, I got to make an impression with these boys. The goal was not really part of the plan, but it happened. And I'm like, Mark Parrish just goose eggs across. I'm like, who's this guy? Next game, 4 goals. I'm like, oh, he's not bad.
You are that guy.
I think I had like 17 or 18 points in 13 games while I was there. And it was generally from him picking it up from me behind the net in my own zone.
Right. Yeah.
On the power play.
Yeah. You can have this now.
So it was fun to play with him and a couple other guys there, but it was a little disappointing that I wasn't around for playoffs again. But that was my junior career, injured the whole time.
So then we're going pro, Rochester Americans. Now it's grown men. This is men, beards, tattoos, smokers. It's real now.
Yep.
And you guys had a hell of a year.
It was awesome. That was you don't have too many years in your career where you feel like every time you step on the ice, you have a chance to win. I feel like I've had that like just 2 or 3 times in my career. And maybe some guys have it more often. And then you're super blessed if you do to play on that many good teams. Yeah. For me, it was few and far in between. But what an experience. I never missed a game that whole year. I was like, played every single game. Played through some injuries. That staph infection in my elbow, that sucker leaked all year. It's a whole story in itself.
Yeah.
Thank you to my trainer, Schnacky, who got me through. And but I got to play with the likes of Randy Cunnyworth was our captain. Mike Hurlbut was my defense partner. Like these are like, I know Randy played quite a few games in the NHL, sure. But a professional minor leaguer. Mike Hurlbut played how many games in the AHL? And you look at the list of names like Dean Melanson on defense, and then you got a good group of young Buffalo Sabres prospects. There's a few of us, all trying to make it to the next level. Jean-Luc Grandpierre, Jason Holland on defense. It was a super cool year, pretty tight-knit group. But just going all the way to the Calder Cup final from having like 4 playoff games experience in junior, it was incredible for me. Like I was just soaking it up. Like we had a great season. You get to these playoffs in Adirondack, our first series, best of 3. Peter Klima was still grinding it out in Adirondack. Right? He had that red bucket on, his signature bucket. And I'm like, where am I right now?
Yeah.
Right? Like is kind of like, who am I playing against? This is crazy. Doug Hudo was on their team at the time, played a handful of NHL games, another great AHL player, but
men,
oh my God, that league was tough.
Yeah.
You got Dennis Bonvie, you've got Frankie Bialowas out there. On our team, we had Greg Walters and Dean Melanson, and every team had like 2 or 3 crazy tough guys.
Yeah.
Frankie Bialowas, the animal. We get to Philadelphia. We're playing in the Spectrum for my first game against him. He's doing barehanded push-ups at center ice with his black hair halfway down his back. I'm like, what league am I in? Right? And you're like, here we go.
Why do they call him the animal? I can't figure it out.
Thank goodness he was a little tired out and near the end of his career.
Yeah.
But there is some Sasha Lakovich, like some of these guys.
So did you have
Brent
the same?
Thompson?
Yeah.
Like I just like if you go through if you start to think about every team,
different time.
Dave Morrison was up in Fredericton. Denny Viel was somewhere in the league. It's yeah.
Did you have the same? Because you had a good year. Did you have that same kind of a confidence boost, like maybe you did at 16 when you decide not to go to Saskatoon? This is a big step. I think people still view it that way. You want to be in the NHL, of course, but going to this level, did you feel like, okay, this is another league where I belong?
Well, that was the process then. Like there was very few guys that made the jump.
Yeah.
Like unless you were a first rounder, like it was almost unheard of that someone in the second round, and I know I'm close to the edge of both rounds, but that's just what the process was. And especially in Buffalo, like Eric Rasmussen, first rounder, my season, like you're expected to play a season. You're expected to, like, he kind of was up and down his whole first year.
Yeah.
But he also a college kid. I think he's a year older than me, a year older than me. So
hasn't played as many games. You're playing weekends only kind of thing.
Yeah, but he was a little more mature. So the Sabres were hoping he was going to step right into their lineup, but he had lots of time in Rochester as well. For me, I just thought that's exactly where I needed to be. So I was like, I went to Sabres training camp and I had a really good training camp. And that's a process too. Like, I remember going to my first training camp, and then you've got now 3 or 4 under your belt, and you learn how to navigate that. You learn how to navigate the 3-3 against Toronto, like, and get the crap beat out of you. And training camp, we're used to go to training camp and Rob Bray, Brad May, Bob Bugner, you're just trying to survive, like, your in-house games. Like, everything was so tough back then.
Stressful.
Yeah. Like,
anxiety ridden. Yeah.
My first training camp, I get there, and this is no joke. And I'm talking to Rip Simonik, who I'd met, but don't really know him. He's the head trainer equipment trainer for the Sabres. I give him my skates to sharpen. He's like, "What are you doing?" I didn't really like new equipment, so I'd probably played the whole year in junior, or maybe half a year and switched to another pair of skates, like maybe 2 pairs of skates in junior.
Yeah.
He looks at mine. He's like, "You can't play in these." I'm like, "What do you mean I can't play in these?" He's like, he literally went to the back room, comes up with a brand new box. I'm like, "Oh, he's going to get me a new pair of skates. This is awesome."
Yeah.
Takes them out, sharpens them, gets them all, like, puts them on the angle grinder and does the old school profiling.
Okay.
Sharpens them up, gives me the box with the skates, takes my skates. I thought he's going to give them to me, drops them in the garbage.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't say anything because I'm seen and not heard. I'm 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah.
I had to go out and do skills. And then my first 2 days of camp in brand new skates in Buffalo, 3 days. There's your plane ticket, kid.
Yeah.
See you later. So anyways, a little off topic, but
Can't believe Ripper would do that to you.
Yeah. But again, back then you're just like,
you don't. Yeah. Like
thank you.
And especially,
he must know what he's doing. Thank you. Like,
especially for you, because that's kind of your nature. You're not going to stir up shit. You're just, I'm happy to be here. Like you say, speak when spoken to, just mind your P's and Q's.
But that year in Rochester, when I went down there and I went to camp, and I hadn't even considered going back to junior, I was like, no chance.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm making this team. Like, I'm playing pro, drove my car out there, packed up my crap, said goodbye. Like, I'm not going home. I'm not going back to the Western League as a 20-year-old. No way.
Wow.
So.
And you did. Didn't really know how to spell the name. Got the EY in there.
Everyone's been spelling it like that.
Yeah, that's
for years.
Right. But you go all the way to the Calder Cup and fall to Peter Laviolette and the Providence Bruins.
Look at that one right there. Whew.
Go to the far post, kid. Just drive the net. There's your buddy Hurlbut.
Empty net. Johnny Graham, soon to be teammate in Tampa a few years later.
That's right.
That was I had an absolute blast that year. I had a couple teammates that probably didn't like me. You know, I know I had one teammate that didn't like me.
Yeah.
Tortured me all year long, but you take your lumps.
Names? Was it a D-man?
No.
Like, just jealous that you're there eating minutes, or?
I don't know why he was jealous, because he was a forward, but not naming names.
All right.
So
it's on YouTube. We can, anything goes on the internet. That's fine.
Anyways, yeah, it was good guys. You go that far. We ran out of gas in Providence, where they had a great team. Savage was on that team, and some other names. And
I didn't realize that you played so few games in Buffalo. I don't know why, because you got 4 games that first year, mostly in Providence, but you got a few games. Then you play the next season, and you're out. Traded to Tampa Bay. Were you? I guess, what are the thoughts there? You're happy to go to once you get there and all that, but here's this team that drafted me. You've barely got a taste, and it was for Chris Gratton, who was he was a big deal back then. He was didn't end up doing a whole lot. Played for a lot of teams. A lot of teams really liked looked good,
Big,
and he was big, strong
centerman. Yeah,
and he wasn't a terrible player, but he was never the elite stud that everyone thought he was going to be. But anyway, you're with Buffalo. Were you sour at all that in a way they'd given up on you so quickly? You went to the Calder Cup the year before.
I was shocked, definitely. So yeah, played 40 some games with the Sabres that year, kind of had made the team out of training camp, had a short stint down. And then I remember being in Toronto, and we, like a week before the trade, and we didn't have a great game as a team, but we had it was like 6-4 the game or 7-3 or something like that. But I was like plus 2 or 3. It had a really solid game, really wasn't the cause of any goals against. Just got on the bus, and the bus had a flat tire, and we sat in Toronto for forever. And then as soon as the bus started rolling, I get the call to come up and sit with the coach, and he's like, "We're sending you down." I was like, "Oh, yeah. Boo." Okay. I'm like, damn, I thought I was doing pretty good. And so then I went to Rochester and played in a few games. And I specifically remember getting ready. We had 3-3 that night. We had a home away home, which is nuts. Like Friday, we'd be in Rochester. I think we were Syracuse or somewhere a little further Saturday, and then back in Rochester Sunday. Like that was the standard issue. So I'm just getting to bed. It's like 11 o'clock at night. Just going to shut her down. And phone rings, Darcy Regier. "Hey, thanks for being a Sabre. We've traded you to Tampa." I knew Tampa was in Florida, but I had no clue where.
Yeah.
I knew they were god awful. That's all I knew about them. I couldn't probably have named maybe 2 players that played on that team. Right. So I was shocked, but I wasn't married at the time, but my girlfriend's parents were in town visiting. And I just remember him being, my wife now, dad, was like, "This is going to be awesome." And he's cracking beers. He's like, "You're going to get to play. These guys suck. You'll get a chance." And it actually turned out to be probably a blessing in disguise, because in Buffalo, I was, again, Brian Campbell, Dimitri Kalainen, Jean-Luc Grandpierre, Jason Holland. You got Jay McKee, Mike Wilson. Like there's all of us within 1 year of each other, all vying for like 1 or 2 spots. So might not have been the worst thing that ever happened.
Well, spoiler alert, it did work out okay. Tampa Bay 7-year run, and I will kind of chronologically go over this you were still such a kid. I love these videos. I mean, look at this kid.
What sideburns hiding?
Shows up in Tampa Bay again, and you know what you are? You're still that kid just trying to fit. I don't want to say anything, or just want to make a good impression. Just want to go out and play as best as I can. LeCavalier's 19. In the first year, you guys win 19 games of 82. Oh. Only Atlanta had a worse record than you guys
I think we were like mathematically eliminated in January.
Yeah, the math would not be in your favor.
Or early February.
Yeah.
February.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not awesome.
So I guess now you get there. Tampa's awesome. It's not Buffalo. It's not Saskatoon. It's not Rochester. It's kind of no one probably cares. There's still kind of a new team at that point. So maybe is there still some excitement, or is it you're like you barely feel like you're in the NHL again?
It was super weird. Steve Ludzig was our head coach, and Steve's a really nice guy, but
everyone loves
super unorganized as a coach, I thought.
Yeah.
So, and maybe it was just he was a product of his environment too. Like we'd get dressed for practice, and there'd literally be like 30 guys or more on the ice, because our injury list was like a mile long.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to suit up for games, which I thought was awesome, and no one wanted to play. Partially because everyone's like eliminated from the playoffs early. Everyone's just mailing it in. And I'm just looking at it as an opportunity as like, hey, play me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get out there.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a revolving door. Like I have all of my team photos, and it takes me a while to figure out who the heck everyone was for those first couple of years in Tampa. It's like Alexander Karatanov, and I know Sergei Gusarov, and we had
team, coach, players all just trying to find their way.
We like on the list, if you look at those, we'd usually use like 5 or 6 goaltenders a year.
Yeah.
just to get through a season. So it was a grind.
Spring Financial. Unexpected expenses, they'll pop up out of nowhere. They give you no warning. Car breaks down, home needs repairs, you're in a bind. Well, you can borrow money for those unexpected expenses right from your phone and receive an e-transfer within hours. Spring Financial offers online personal loans from $500 all the way up to $35,000 with no stress and no branch visits ever. Join thousands of happy customers who have made Spring Financial Canada's top-rated lender. Apply in 3 minutes at springfinancial.ca/barn. That's springfinancial.ca/barn.
Looking for the fastest personal loan in Canada? Well, look no further. Spring Financial offers fully online personal loans with zero stress and no need for branch visits. But don't take our word for it.
Thank you. Thank you, Spring Financial.
Thank you very much.
Spring Financial is the best.
Apply today at springfinancial.ca.
Final home game of the regular season for the Calgary Surge goes tonight at Winsport with the stinking Winnipeg Sea Bears in town. Will Boomer and his children be at the game at the Paybuilt VIP table? Only time will tell. 7 o'clock start tonight. 7 o'clock. Winsport, Surge, Sea Bears. See you there.
Little message for you for the Mod Medical Clinic, bearoused.ca. As men, we can be a little sensitive. We don't want to share. We don't talk about certain things. But as men get older, things happen to our bodies. We know that. It's time to stop being silly, get out in the open and talk about these things. With ViaSure from bearoused.ca, from the Mod Medical Clinic. If you're popping the blue pill, you need to learn about ViaSure. This is a non-medication approach. Muscle function, breaking down scar tissue, reforming blood vessels, no pain, no downtime. But it's instead of the short-term fix or whatever you get from the blue pill, let's get our bodies right. Pelvic floor physiotherapy is what they offer as well. The team there, they're going to help you with incontinence, sexual performance, hip, lower back pain, assist the stabilization to the core, stronger, better, more confident. Does it sound good? I think so. bearoused.ca is the website. It's here in our city. They're here to help, and they're here to take away the silly embarrassment or stigma that we have about not talking about things that happen to men when they grow older. You're gonna be so happy you did it. Confidence, pelvic floor stability. It's at the base root of all of this. We're having fun with it, but they are here to help you and make a real change in how you live your life, man. bearoused.ca. The Mod Medical Clinic is here to help.
Hey guys, it's Pinder. Let's check in with Cavalry FC's busy summer schedule. After a nice little run at home, fellas are on the road for 2 weeks. Langley, followed by Ottawa. Next home game, August 10th. It is Marvel superhero game, 2 o'clock. Saturday, August 10th. Halifax Wanderers to visit. Let's go Cavs. Need 3 points. See you at Echo Field. Back to the show.
Obviously with the luxury of the crystal ball or the time machine, you can look back. So at 19 wins. The next year, 29th out of 30 again. But Atlanta moved past you now. The Thrashers actually had more points, but some different things happen, and you can see the building blocks. They pick up Marty St. Louis off of waivers. He comes in. I'm very curious. Did you know who he was at all, or what were your impressions when this smallish forward comes in and starts playing for the team?
I'd only played like a game or two against Marty, but I'd heard the rumblings from guys that had played a little more against him, like ultra competitive, has put up big numbers in college, and ultimate competitor.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, I really knew nothing about Marty, and I was like, wow. But you don't have to spend very long around him to know that he's full throttle.
Jay Feaster told me one time, he said, Marty St. Louis had the mindset, and it was not something that he had to convince himself. He just felt like, I could be sent to the minors tomorrow. You have 40 goals. Didn't matter. He just felt like he was, if I don't perform and if I don't do everything I can, my spot is not safe. And that's how he played.
And he's the guy too that was forever trying to evolve his game. Never satisfied. Like the amount of meetings that he probably just sparked up himself with John Tortorella and how are we going to figure this out? Like the power play is only ticking along at X percent.
Sure.
How are we going to get that up to the next level? And just like continually talking the game with his teammates. Like, I'm like, how does he have the energy to do it? Like, even if you're like an example, he comes sit with me and he's like, you know what, like Sarich on this outlet pass, this guy's here.
Yeah.
Like if I take a step this way and you put it off the boards and maybe I've got a step on him and that'll like free up some space. So next time you're in that situation, it's just like, whoa.
So not shocked to see him coaching Montreal out of left field.
No, fairly detail oriented guy.
Built for it.
The other guy that came in that I had a little more experience against and knew that he had a ton of offensive upside and knew that he was pretty gritty for not a big guy was Dan Boyle.
Yeah.
Like we kind of snatched him up out of Florida's system.
How does that happen? Because, and you know, that was actually the next year, and we'll get a 5th rounder from the state rival. You know, these, you never trade with each other, let alone a guy who turns into a 50-point defenseman.
But Florida, you know, they weren't far off our spot where it was a revolving door over there as well. So there was a few across the state deals in my time in Tampa.
Brad Richards comes in, 3rd round pick, but makes the team out of camp. St. Louis in. Nikolai Habibulin trade happened in the offseason. Okay, well, the goaltender, this is going to be okay. And the Ludwig era ends and Tortorella comes in. First impressions of Torts.
Well, I had Torts as my assistant coach. So he was assistant under Ludzi when I got there. And Brad Shaw was another assistant coach at the time. So, you know, I'd only known John very briefly in that, like, and he was kind of down looking after the forwards.
Of course, yeah.
Brad Shaw was looking after us defensemen. So I only had the impression of him as an assistant coach, and good guy, pretty jovial, New York accent. You know, I'd heard that, I knew about the success that he had at the AHL level.
But he wasn't Torts yet, right? He was good cop still kind of thing.
Well, he was but I had also heard, because he was in Rochester, not just a couple years before I got there, the year before I got there, I believe, was he the guy that took them to their Calder Cup win? Or no, he might've been, no, that was, sure. It was actually a few years prior, and he had been an assistant coach in New York, in Buffalo. And so I'd heard rumblings of him, but like had no clear impressions of him as a head coach.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, like the day he took over and Jay Feaster was in, the vibe changed. Like it was, again, I've shared this lots, and I'm not joking. Like some doctor in our locker room, one of those years when we were eliminated, like right after John took over, and we're eliminated in January or February, only winning a handful of games. Some doctors like, oh, well, we're back on the golf course again, more time to go. Poof, that guy's gone. Like if you weren't focused and going to make this team better, like it's like a change is coming, and he's just going to slowly weed everyone out. And then that combined with, you know, you had some guys that had been maybe looked over, slighted, that had stuff to prove. I don't know if I put myself in that category. Like, yeah, I was in Buffalo for a small period of time, but still, I just wanted to establish myself. Yeah. But you had Dan Boyle, Marty St. Louis. You got a guy that then comes over like Dave Anderchuk, still searching for the ultimate goal. Freddie Modine, who loved it in Toronto. And then all of a sudden he finds himself in Tampa. Vinny Prospel, who had bounced around, which I know he wasn't part of our cup team, but he was there. I played with him on either side of that cup win. He was the guy that was there for a few years leading up to it, then left and then came back after. So you get Habibulin, who we were absolutely thrilled when he showed up. I was like, you want to know how good this guy is? Like Winnipeg Jet. Like, have you ever seen him play a couple games up there? Like they're not very good, and he's stealing games for these guys. Yeah. So it was a super exciting time. It was like kind of a perfect storm, and you just had a core group of guys eventually, once they kind of weeded out all the people that didn't want to be there, that had something to prove.
And it doesn't, man, in some ways it happens so quickly, but it does take some time, because Tortorella's first season, you get up to 27th, but you missed the playoffs again by 18 points. You're well out of it. The next season, breakthrough. From 69 to 93 points, you win the Southeast, you make the playoffs. LeCavalier hits 30 goals for the first time. St. Louis goes from 66 to 33 goals. Boyle goes from nothing to 50 points in this. You beat Washington in round 1, but then lose to New Jersey in round 2. But it's the first ever series win. There was one previous playoff, but so it just all comes together real quick.
Yeah. And that was just a product of, like, I guess, kind of finding the right personnel and you got rid of the outsiders that were always lingering around, and guys that had points to prove. We started off that season, like, starting to win games though. Like, you'd win one or you'd lose one, win one, lose one, win one. It's like, oh, this is a different pattern than lose, maybe squeak one out. Yeah. Like, we were competitive right from the start of that season. So that gave us some belief. We kind of continued it throughout the year. Our special teams practices were uber intense. Torts practices, uber intense. Our training camps were nuts down there. By far the hardest. Like, it was just all prep to, like, get your mindset that, like, this isn't easy. You're going to have to work for it.
Yeah.
And then getting into the playoffs that year, well, we were like, that was mind blowing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we were all in shock. When it came to playing the Capitals, they had Jaromir Jagr, and we had matched up well against them that year. I think Bondra was still there. You got Oli Kolzig in net, who's still almost in the prime of his career, maybe teetering towards the end a little bit. But Pavel Kabina made Jagr's life a nightmare. It was like his sole goal, like, other check on the other team, and he's not getting a sniff. And the rest of us played pretty well. And I think it was a double overtime win in game 6 or triple overtime win to knock them off. And then that was it. That was our Stanley Cup. that year.
Yeah, sure.
We're matching up against the New Jersey Devils next. Like, these are men.
Yeah.
It's like they had throttled us all year long. We were beat before the series started. Like, we were just ecstatic to grab one game out of that series. And but that beating Washington was like, wow, like, incredible. Well, just getting the playoffs in itself was pretty neat.
I mean, again, you talk about the trajectory. So it's really bad, a little bit better, quite a bit better. And then it's the 03-04 season. You win the division again. You win the Eastern Conference regular season. In 3 years, from 69 to 106 points, 46 wins. You guys are an elite team now. How you're handling it very well, but it's funny. All this kind of media speak and cliche. You got to win, you got to lose a little bit, then you win a little bit, and then you get a little bit better. That was your Tampa Bay Lightning experience en route to the 04, right? It was steadily getting better, lose, learn from it, win again, keep winning. I mean, what else? Your playoff run was amazing. And you know what? Corey Stillman came in. I guess that was the other thing.
Daryl
Sador comes in. Going through this yesterday, I said, why are these teams giving up on Dan Boyle, Daryl Sador for very, very little, really, in terms of things? I could be a GM if teams want to make those trades.
Yeah.
But so you get through the season. What's your thoughts now? You're the Eastern Conference champions. You've won last year. A loss in round 2 is not going to cut it now, right?
No, we viewed ourselves as a legitimate contender. Like, besides our little lapse in January where we had a few, like, get everybody on the same page moments that year. And I vividly remember one where, like, Vinny loved his cookies.
LeCavalier.
Yeah. He wanted his points. Everyone else had figured it out. Like, and that's part of it. Brad Richards, Marty St. Louis, smart hockey players, Freddie Modine, like our driving offense, Corey Stillman played the game the right way. And all these other guys figured it out. Vinny just still was like, I'll be up here at the red line if you guys need me. It's like, man, you're a big body. You got to get back in our zone and play some defense. he was kind of the last piece of the puzzle. And once we got him on board, it was like, man, we're a good hockey team.
So what does that mean? What kind of literal or what kind of changes to his game? What happens?
It was like Tortorella was like fed up with him because he would not commit to the defensive part of the game. He still was like old Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm going to be down here if you need me. Send me a breakaway pass.
There were real battles with those two, right?
Oh yeah. Like that was Tortorella's biggest hurdle, was probably getting Vinny on.
And he'd know it. If I can crack this nut.
I remember he was ready to leave Vinny. I don't know, it was at the airport or on a bus ride. And Dave Anderchuk basically had to stand in front of the bus and say, no, we're not leaving him. And then we had to kick Torts, send him away so we could have a little, it was almost like an intervention with Vinny, and just be like, hey, if you don't figure this out, like, he'll probably scratch you, do something crazy. Like, he's not afraid. So that was a pivotal moment in our season. But that's another year where every time we stepped on the ice, I'm like, we're going to win tonight. Like, if someone beats us, they're going to have to be pretty damn good to beat us. And then once we got to the playoffs, there was a little bit of doubt against the Islanders because they had matched up really well against us that year, and they'd given us fits. We split 1-1 at home. And then I remember someone in the paper said, like, oh, we match up so well against Tampa. And everyone was just like, let's shove it right up there.
Yeah.
And off we go.
And you did. Marty St. Louis wins game 5 in overtime. Great shot. Is that Wade Dublevitz, I think? Something like that. Marty's excited. You then...
Wade Flaherty?
Maybe. Then it's Montreal, and they're overwhelmed. It's a 4-gamer.
We got a lot of good bounces to go our way that series. It should have been closer than that, but everything was good for us.
Yeah.
Oh God, this shift. I remember this one.
Philadelphia, round 3. It's a battle.
Keith Primo was a house on fire. Probably the best season of his NHL career. He put that team on his back and like willed them all the way to this series and almost willed them past us. He was so good.
Do you have a similar kind of a mission like Kubina had against Yager? Because going back over the tape, you guys were in a battle all the time. Every night, it seemed like it was you two going toe-to-toe.
I think he got the better of me. That one shift he came in the corner. I don't know if that was the same one that we just saw in the tape, but hit me, lost my glove and stick. Somehow the puck leaves our zone. I finally collect my stuff. I'm just about getting back to the, they dump it in my corner again. And here he comes again. I'm like, really? Do I have to go in the corner with this guy again?
Yeah.
Like, he was, you knew that he was their guy that year. So you had to pay so much attention to him. And then Jeremy Roenick had given me fits throughout my career. Like, everyone says, who's the hardest guy to play against? And I have a little short list of guys that like were in my kitchen. He was always in my kitchen. So every time I was on the ice with that guy, like, he made me look bad a lot. And I knew it. So that was such a mental battle for me to not have him get the better. And he got the better of me in Calgary, my very first playoff series here against the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah.
Prick went and scored 2 goals on us in game 7.
Yeah, he did.
So
yeah,
he's
not very nice of him to do.
Near the top of my list.
Yeah.
So yeah, that series was, and it was
win game 1, lose game 2, win game 3, lose game 4. It was a dogfight. It was I remember it was a classic because I do remember, obviously Keith Primo, everyone knew who he was. He was always kind of the second line guy. He's going to be the second guy.
He was never the stud.
He broke through, and because of injuries there again, he couldn't keep up that level, but his
concussions.
He was unstoppable.
Yeah. I thought that was really, like, I watched him as a Detroit Red Wing as a young kid, feeling his way out. And then he became a Flyer. And like you said, he was always kind of supporting cast.
Yeah.
And that year I was just like, wow, like, this guy has figured it out and he's going to be a force in the league. And then that's too bad.
So you're off to the finals. This is by far and away the furthest you've been. This is Tampa Bay's on board now. They know who the Lightning are. You guys it's a big deal. It's Calgary. What are your thoughts when you find out it's not Detroit, this juggernaut Detroit team? It's not going to be Vancouver, who was very good as well. It's not going to be the Sharks. It's Calgary. You're a Prairie guy. I guess thoughts on your opponent?
Well, being the fact that it wasn't Detroit, like, I guess there wasn't the offensive threat, but just the fact you come out of a 7-game series against Philly that's so physical, you just knew that you were in for it again. Yeah. Like, you knew this team, and they'd had to change. Like, we were paying attention to the playoffs and watching all the games, and this team has had to change their style due to all of the injuries. And you got guys out there like Regier, Warner, Dave Lowry. And then you know how Jerome McGinley can play if he wants to get a little bit pissed off out on the ice. Even guys like Oleg Saprikin, who wasn't a real physical guy, like, he's throwing body checks out there in the playoffs. You got big bodies back there like Mike Commodore on defense. I mean, Marty Jelena, the consummate playoff performer. Yeah. And I had trained with Marty in the summers before and seen him, and I'm like, I got to chase this guy around. So there was no letdown from our side. We knew it was going to be a different style of game. I thought that we maybe felt we had the upper hand offensively. Mm-hmm. Like, we might have a few more weapons than they do, but no, this was like, we weren't taking these guys lightly. And then you get a team like them that's surprised a bunch of other teams, like we had kind of been doing for about a year and a half. Yeah. You're like, these guys are going to want it.
They believe they can do this. Yeah.
They're hungry. They're just as hungry as us. So those are some of our conversations, is like, we can't take anything for granted.
To that point in the playoffs, you guys hadn't trailed in a series. You lose game 1. So it's the first time you're down. You're at home, 4-1. It was a very good game for the Flames. What do you remember after game 1? If you do, I'm just kind of curious, the memory lane that because there's the Calgary Flame memory lane, and then there's the other side.
And I honestly don't remember a lot. I just, again, as far as like the theme of our team that year, and I think it was good preparation, the series that we had just been through, like them, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. It was, I remember that, if I remember anything, that being the talk. Well, the trend continues.
We're just in it again.
We won one, we lose one. Let's go win the next one, boys. And see what happens. But specifics, I think we were a little disappointed in ourselves. I think we'd made a couple mistakes on a couple of goals that night, if I recall correctly, like a couple of defensive lapses, which our details to the game were our success. Like, our prep all year long was the most detailed preparation I've ever had because of our coach, like, of any team that I've played on. So it's just like, let's get back to what we know. And I know that's cliche, but that's what professional athletes do. It's so repetitive that it's in your game. That's why you get away from it for a second and it really feels disjointed. So it's like, let's just go back to what we know and get after it. But like, again, it's pretty general. I don't remember.
Well, you lose game 1, 4-1. You come back, you win game 2, 4-1. Third period, Flames are going to take their chunk of flesh. There's Ferentz is fighting Stillman and Andre Waz fighting. It was setting the tone for going into Calgary. You, just because you're from Western Canada, you probably would have paid a little bit closer attention. The crowds, the Red Mile, what's waiting for you in Calgary. Game 3, you guys are underwater for a lot of that game, as it's on at the Dome.
Oh yeah. That was probably the craziest I've ever seen that rink. Like, in my career here, like, the biggest game. I've sat in the crowd now as a fan, like at that game 7 versus Dallas a few years back. And that was pretty wild and pretty intense. But that game, you usually don't hear the crowd, and they usually don't have an effect on you no matter how crazy they get, but they were unbelievable.
Are you feeling it in the room? Can you, before the game?
Well, and then you come to Calgary, like, it's a different animal. You couldn't sleep in the hotel. We had the fire trucks, the alarms going, thank you to the city of Calgary.
Yeah.
you couldn't, it was like the fans were as disruptive as they could be.
Yeah.
Still not as rude as the fans in Philly, but equally
that's a different
disruptive.
Philly.
Yeah,
For sure.
It's a different level.
Yeah.
So
you lose game 3 and then game 4. I mean, it's just is it 3-1 or is it 2-2? And it's tight. Brad Richards scores. Richards was unbelievable in that playoff, but in that series, you get a power play goal early and you ride it out. A Habby Bulin shutout. I mean, everything changed that night. I know for Flames, like this is 3-1. You can put this thing to bed. There's no way they're going to beat Kipper and no chance. How they didn't get a goal that night is still hard, I think, for Flames fans to take.
Yeah, and that's probably the game I remember the least about in the series. Like I don't even remember like what my performance would have been like. I have watched the tapes, but I haven't watched them in a while.
Yeah,
and
29 saves for Habby Bulin. And by now the injuries are piling up. Regeer played 30 minutes and 37 seconds.
How much
60
I can only imagine like even how much Commodore would have played that night. Yeah. And they had Brennan Evans as their call up in Calgary. Like that series was an absolute grind. But again, that's the game I remember the absolute least from. So it's like, well, this brain doesn't remember much anyways, but
you know what? There were some highs and lows from that series. So then you go back home and Jelena scores early on the power play. St. Louis gets it back. Iggy gets a soft one on Habby Bulin. Modine ties it in the third, off to overtime. And Saprikan gets it. Mm-hmm. There would be another overtime game coming, but anything there when you're at home and now you're in stave mode.
That was probably there was generally probably a little sense of doubt that finally crept into our dressing room, right? Like no one would say it. All the right things were said, but you can't help but feel like, oh shit, like, oh, now we got to go back to Calgary and try to pick one out of there. And we know what the crowd's going to be like. We've done it already. So if there was anything, there was maybe, I know it started to enter my mind, like we're all great professionals. So you're never sharing that with your teammates.
Of course, yeah.
But that one hurt a lot. And especially it being in overtime and so pivotal. You give a team a chance to put you out. Like, yeah, not an awesome feeling that night after that game was over.